Meeting to order. Clerk, can you call the roll, please? You report that? We have a quorum, don't we?
You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Let's see. Initially, we've got a request for several bills to go to the Committee on Commerce and Labor, and those bills are Senate Bill 708, and the patrons have been advised of this. Senate Bill 708, Senate Bill 765, Senate Bill 766, and Senate Bill 767. Can we do that by voice vote? Okay. Is there a motion properly seconded to re-refer these to the Committee on Commerce and Labor? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Those ayes? We have a no. Then we have to do it electronically? No, I'm a yes. Okay, okay. All right. All right, that's done. Also, one other matter. I have Senate Bill 940, which dealt with CSOs and a notice requirement regarding discharges. And I'll tell the committee that I've talked with the folks who this would affect. I'm confident that they are already working towards accomplishing what I want them to do in this bill. And so as a result of that, I would ask for a motion to carry this bill over for the year.
So moved.
Motion properly seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Okay. And then Senator Spruill, you wanted to be first.
Bless your heart.
Come on up. Come on up.
Mr. Chairman and members, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I have two.
Which one would you like to take first?
I hope the easy one first. 872.
All right.
All right.
Let's try the easy one.
Mr. Chairman, I have a substitute already in place.
Can you all distribute that substitute, please?
But there are a couple words on the substitute that need to be changed.
All right, motion properly seconded to adopt substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is before Senator Spruill.
Mr. Chairman, on the substitute that you have on page 2, if you look at line 37 and 38 on the substitute, on line 37, if you would strike the word conduct that is directly related to.
Conduct
that is directly related to.
On to line 38, conduct directly related to.
And on 38, after agriculture and add and hunting activity. Hunting.
And hunting.
Yes.
That would be on line 38 after the word agriculture and before activity. All right, is there a motion on those amendments? Is there a second?
Thank you.
Motion properly seconded to adopt amendments. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. All right.
Mr. Chairman, this bill provides clarity for animal control officers and law enforcement officers who are charged with enforcing adequate shelter law. This bill offers a guideline to citizens who may not realize they are actually harming their animals. This will give dogs a 24/7 protection. Mr. Chairman, I have made several amendments to my bill based on feedback from constituents groups. Number one, I have clarified that the bill does not apply to animals serving a farm purpose in response to feedback from Animals Agriculture Council. Number two, Mr. Chairman, I have removed the prohibition of overnight changing, which was feedback I received from animal control officers. And I am certain that the weather restriction of the bill will prohibit the work kinds of overnight changing. Number three, Mr. Chairman, I have removed the prohibition of all metal link change, also based on feedback received from animal control office. Mr. Chairman, so I did this, and so I was hoping this would suffice. And lastly, Mr. Chairman, I have removed language which allowed tethering the dog only when an owner is present on the property. This is a major concession on my part and on the part of those who are concerned. So, Mr. Chairman, I tried to meet with all the different groups, the animal groups, the law enforcement officers of this group, to hope that we can at least get something in that we can make sure that dogs are protected. Dogs, Mr. Chairman, really, they're like people. They're lovely. Pets, Mr. Animal, tell you the truth, a dog will let you down when nobody want, when you will, but dog won't. So I'm hoping that we got to do something. It's not perfect, but at least we got to make sure that animals are lovable animals, and we should treat and respect animals. It's not right, but at least let's give us something to protect our animals. I hope, Mr. Chairman, that we can pass this bill.
All right, Senator Sproul. I agree with you. I like my dogs better than I do a lot of people. Senator Sproul, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe that the current law does not provide these protections at this time?
No, sir, it does
These
not.
are necessary?
Yes,
to
sir.
add them? Okay. Do you have folks who, I'm sorry, are there any questions of the patron first by the committee? Not, Senator Sproul, do you have those that would like to testify on behalf of your bill or speak in favor of it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
And I will remind everybody, we put a clock on all these bills. It's not aimed at one bill, but we allow 3 minutes for each side for these bills. So
Mr. Chairman, if you're ready to vote now but in opposition, I tell them to keep quiet.
let's hear what everybody has to say first, Senator.
Mr. Chairman, Matt Gray with the Humane Society. Thank you to Senator Sproul for sponsoring the issue. As he described, we have made a lot of changes to this draft bill and talked to a lot of different groups. I think there is broad agreement on this. I know I can represent the vast majority of animal welfare organizations in Virginia who are supportive of this bill, including the Federation of Humane Societies. I'm speaking on their behalf today. There was testimony when a version of this bill was presented in the House from the Attorney General's office to your question, Mr. Chairman, and they expressed that they didn't feel like current law was adequate enough to cover dogs in these extreme cold temperatures like we've had in recent weeks. And so they were supportive of making some clarifying changes to the law, which is sort of what we're trying to do here. So I ask you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. My name is Daphna Nachminovich. I'm representing People for the Ethical Treatments of Animals, 100,000 members and supporters in the Commonwealth. We wholeheartedly support this bill. I will show you a photo of why this bill really fills a gap in Virginia state law. This is a dog named Hazel who lives in Gloucester. And Hazel was out in the storm and the snow last month during the bomb cyclone. Hazel had a doghouse, which we had provided for her, and it was as good of a doghouse as a doghouse can get, but she was still trembling violently, struggling to keep her paws off the ground, and her water was frozen solid. An animal control officer wouldn't have been able to take decisive action on behalf of Hazel other than just ask her people to give her fresh water, which of course wouldn't have stayed fresh for very long in that weather. We were able to take Hazel in during the storm, but we did have to give her back when the weather changed. So this bill would make very clear to her owners that they don't have the option of leaving Hazel outside when the weather is dangerous for her health and welfare. And I will not keep you much longer, but I did want to just read you something from Dr. Nick Dodman with Tufts University. He's a veterinarian and an animal behaviorist. And he says, domestic dogs and cats have evolved to depend upon humans for survival and have been bred to have much shorter coats than their wild ancestors, as well as unique physical characteristics that diminish their ability to survive outdoors. For most domestic animal companions, the general rule of thumb is that if it's too cold or hot for you, it's too cold or hot for them. Thank you so much. Please vote yes.
Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hi, my name's Kimberly Hawk, and I'm with the House Project out of Charlottesville, Virginia. In these binders today are 116,140 front and back pages of names filled with signatures of Virginia constituents asking that you support Senate Bill 872. Our mission is to work directly with the families of chained and neglected dogs. We service 9 counties in central Virginia. During the recent freeze, we were inundated with calls from people pleading for help for chained dogs who were left outside 24/7. These folks had already called their local animal control officers, only to be told that nothing can be done, even when the temperature dropped down to 0, because the dogs had adequate shelter and water. Water which was actually ice. What we experience in the field is it depends on the animal control officer as to whether or not the existing laws that are already on the books are enforced. For example, some ACOs think that those blue barrels are okay, and then others say, no, that's not okay. So it depends on the county, depends on the ACO too. Some of them enforce the laws and some do not, unfortunately. So we think that Virginia needs this bill because it clearly specifies a temperature range. The vague language that's in the current laws mean that the ACOs do not enforce the laws consistently. And even animal owners may not be clear as far as what is expected of them. This bill clearly states that it would be considered legally acceptable, which will help people adhere to the law and help ACOs better apply it. Chained dogs are also more vulnerable and likely to freeze to death or die of heat stroke, since many times they become tangled up on trees, metal rods, or other obstructions around them. They become so tangled that they can't reach their shelters or their water, and I personally have found many, many dogs in this situation, near death. So last week I spoke to an ACO down, I'm not going to mention the county because it hasn't gone to court yet, but he found a dog froze to death who was chained, well, on a tether, not a chain, and the tether was pulled so taut from this dog on his belly, like trying to get back into his doghouse, but he froze to death. So that's why this bill is so important to me, because I've seen it up close and personal. We go out a couple times a week and work in the backwoods of Virginia, and this is a real problem. So the House Project and myself, a constituent in Charlottesville, Virginia, are asking that you vote yes on this Senate bill, which will provide better protection for our companion animals. Thank you.
The time is up for those that would like to support it, but if you'd just like to say who you are and register your support, that'd be fine.
Mr. Chair, Lauren Schmidt on behalf of the administration, and we do support this bill.
Thank you. There's no one else. Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition to the bill? If so, come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Sharon Hutchins with the Virginia Federation of Dog Clubs and Breeders. And there have been so many changes, thank you, Senator Sproul, that some of my objections to it have been taken care of. The biggest problem, I think, right now is if you can't really state a temperature range in a bill for dogs. It's a species that ranges from 2 pounds to 200 pounds.
And I do want to address that because, I'm sorry, it's me. I was just talking to Senator Hanger about that. I've got a Labrador, and that dog will lay out in the snow when it's 10 degrees and roll around on it and wallow, and she loves it. But the difference is we're not leaving her out there tied on a rope when we're gone. And so that, when I read the thing, you essentially, if you want to tie the dog up, you got to be on the property, I think is what he's saying.
I think
without all these other conditions.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So these conditions apply if you are not at home. I think, if I'm reading it right.
Is that right?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
I have whippets, and they don't have much hair, and they would be calling the SPCA themselves if I left them out, if it was under 60. So, I think that the problem here is that we have dogs that are hairless, that AKC recognizes, and mixes of those dogs would also be hairless, some of them. Some of them have coats that allow them to pull people out of avalanches. And those dogs are extremely uncomfortable in temperatures that are pretty normal for us. What bothers us the most about this is what's going to happen to those dogs when the people can't tether them. Most of the folks who tether dogs don't have a lot of choice. They don't have a fence. They can't bring them in the house. The dog may not be housebroken. It may be very destructive. What we are afraid is going to happen is they're going to wind up in shelters or turned loose, which is going to be a worse problem. We love all dogs too, and frankly, I would much prefer to see dogs in a pen or in a house rather than chained or tethered. But I just don't feel like this bill quite gets there because, and I'm not sure how it could. You go right ahead.
Mr. Chairman, here to answer one of her questions, and also what she has in her hand is the original bill. I'm gonna give a copy of the substitute. The substitute answered most of her questions. One of the questions that she had answered, you want to answer that one? Now, we have a copy.
Just to answer your, Mr. Chairman, Matt Gray with Humane Society, just to answer your question, we have stricken the part of the bill that had required the owner to be on the property at all times while the dog is chained. That was a result of a lot of feedback that we received on the House side. I think that was the substitute that was introduced.
All right, let me ask, because I'm not sure now of my own interpretation. So if I could ask Chad to give me your interpretation of how this bill reads, if you will.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the substitute you have in front of you is a little different than what I think they expect it to be. So I think the senator intended for that subsection A, when no owner is on the property, to be stricken. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Is that right? Yes, yes, sir.
All right. So then is there a motion to strike when no owner is on the property? Is there a second? Second. Motion properly seconded to strike that language, little paragraph A, when no owners on the property. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. All right, so that removes that restriction now.
And Mr. Chairman, most other questions that the lady had, she was looking at the original, and I gave her the substitute. Most all of the questions she asked, they'll take care of what she wanted on the substitute. She did not have the substitute. I gave her a copy of it.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman,
Questions? Senator Black.
question of the patron. I noticed the 85 degrees Fahrenheit. We have, pretty lengthy periods in the summer in Virginia where the temperature is higher than 85 degree Fahrenheit. I wonder if that isn't something that you could adjust upward, and maybe some of the dog experts could comment, but that seems awfully low. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, Senator Black, it's a temperature that is fairly common with these kinds of restrictions, both in local ordinances and then elsewhere where we have statewide standards. I will note that it applies only to a chained or tethered dog, right? As the chairman described earlier, your dog in your yard, on the front porch, not fixed to a point with a chain or tether, doesn't have the same temperature restrictions, if that makes sense, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Black, what we see is that when dogs are tethered, oftentimes they get tangled. And so even if it's 85 degrees, which may be more tolerable in the shade, if they're in full sun and they're tangled, they can't get to shade or they can't get to their water source, they're extremely vulnerable to the temperatures, the beating sun, the stifling heat. So the tether itself, by virtue of restricting their movement and the fact that many of them get tangled so frequently, adds gravely to the danger that is presented by the temperature alone.
would it make a great difference if you raise that to 90 degrees?
For some dogs, it may. I mean, I think it's a consideration, and it would most certainly be, would afford dogs more protection than what they have now. But when the sun is beating down and there is no shade, and unfortunately, we have a team of field workers who go out and serve chained dogs, and getting tangled is that's a very, very frequent occurrence with them. So if they get tangled during the wrong moment when the sun is above them and they're not tethered near a shade tree, they're essentially at the mercy of the sun, can't reach shelter, can't reach shade or water, and they perish quite quickly. They cannot sweat, they can only pant, and so they can overheat from the inside out and perish, suffer horribly and perish.
If I may, to Senator Black's point, if it's 85 degrees, if it's 90 degrees, 95 degrees, if they're under a shade tree and they've got a breeze coming off of something, doesn't that make a difference?
Mr. Chairman, shade absolutely makes a difference. Unfortunately, sometimes they're just not able to reach shade.
right, any other questions of the patron or the witnesses? If not, the bill's before us, the committee operates on a motion. There's a motion. Motion properly seconded to report the bill as amended. Clerk, please open the roll.
Nine ayes, 5 nays.
That bill report, Senator Sproul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want another one?
Yes, sir. Last one is SB 838.
Senate Bill 838.
Yes, sir.
This one may be a little tougher, Senator Sproul.
Yes, sir. Just be kind. Well, I want to start off, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, is that I was trying to figure out what have I got myself into on this bill, Mr. Chairman, because the first thing is the gentleman came in my office today, and the first thing he said was, I don't want to get you don't want to get yourself embarrassed. And I said, I'm a senator now, I know how to act. I'm a senator now. So I said, well, you mind just sit down, sir, just sit down and just give me your name and talk about it. And and he gave me his point of view. The question is that this board, Mr. Chairman, that we're concerned about was that why are you doing this? This six-member review board that will be tasked with reviewing citizen complaints of misconduct by conservation officers. The performance of conservation officers is carried out in the policy of the Department of Game and Fishery. It is a good bill that seeks to help agencies, first of all, because there's a dislike of trust among the conservation officers. They feel that when the person go hunting or whatever they do in the woods, that if they have a complaint and if they are disrespected by the conservation officers, that they have no avenue to turn to. So that's why this board, as you're saying, by the governor, by the General Assembly, to create a board that will review the complaint from the citizen from an officer. And also, I said to them on the pros and cons, is that from the police department out in the street, if there's a problem out in the street from the police department, that you can make a complaint to the internal affairs, not to the officer's boss. The internal affairs are outside opinion. Even the sheriff says to me that he does not support this, but now we changed the name to conservation officers to allow them to have the same authority as a regular policeman. So if that's the case, then we're saying that if an officer make a mistake, or if you happen to abuse someone, disrespect someone, that person has a right to say, well, I'm going to report you to someone to investigate. And that's where this comes from. And I have members who are here and support this. Then I asked the question to the members who support this bill. I said, do you have someone? Then I got later on that there was a problem with the board, the game board and the director. They said the director is not doing his job. And then I also, Mr. Chairman, was told by one member that our chairman, Mr. Stewart himself, had a problem, and that he himself had a problem and a report that, and because he reported that on his yard, they came in and brought in the whole mob squad, my words, Mr. Chairman, brought in the mob squad for him because he issued a complaint. So the question is this, all our officers are doing a great job, but when they mistreat a citizen, the citizen has the right to have someone to say, hey, that who do I complain to? And that's why this board that was created, make it fair from the governor to the General Assembly to the AG and membership. That's why this was put forward to say, hey, who do I go to complain when someone mistreat me? And had the chairman had that, I wouldn't be here today. Mr. Chairman, I do have some support.
Senator Sproul, you're right, and I don't think anybody on this committee, perhaps in the General Assembly, was more outspoken on this issue than I was a few years ago. And I have to say, as a result of that, I saw where there was a substantial improvement towards those efforts, and I think that there were some holes in leadership positions. They were having some difficulties, which I think they've worked on, and I've seen a tremendous improvement in my part of the world. but you are exactly right. Just to make sure I understand this, you are creating a review board that could hear these complaints and then report to the game board,
That's right.
which some would argue is the problem now, is the game board.
All right.
Right?
Praise the Lord.
All right, bring your witness up. Bring your witness up.
Yes, sir.
See if he can help on this one.
God bless the efforts of so many people. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Kirby Birch, representing the Virginia Hunting Dog Alliance. We support this bill and indeed ask the senator to carry it. We recognize what you said, Senator Stewart, that the agency has made strides to address specific problems. However, for more than 20 years, problems of the nature that many of you have experienced have festered with the agency. This bill was brought forward not to smear the agency or any individual that works there now or has in the past. It is not an accusation against the current executive director or any of the former executive directors. The Department of Game and Inland Fisheries is supervised by a supervisory board. The supervisory board has broad authority in every area except personnel. That is left in the hands of the executive director by law.
But isn't the executive director hired by the board?
He is.
So he answers to
And
the
so
board.
every time we have a personnel problem that the board doesn't agree with, their only remedy is to fire him, basically. I mean, you can give a bad performance review, but after,
then my
for example,
question-
the current one, I believe, has been there 41 years, and I consider him a friend.
My question is, how does it help to create another board to report to the game board?
Well, for one thing, the board has representatives from multiple perspectives, as you know, a defense attorney, a senior law enforcement officer with extensive years of experience, a hunter and a fisher representative that are practitioners. Many of the board members, as you're aware, are political appointees that may not have direct experience either with law enforcement or with the experiences of the average constituent of the agency. This board gives an opportunity to review in more depth across a broad spectrum the law enforcement activity of the agency and complaints made against it, to draw conclusions and opinions which the board can or may not choose to act on.
Okay.
And bring information that the board simply doesn't have time to review on a regular, ongoing basis. I attend most of the wildlife and law enforcement committee meetings, and we hear the hearing. I mean, we hear the information brought to the board from law enforcement. But it's difficult to bring many things together in open session, and the public simply has lost faith that the steps taken, admittedly incremental. I mean, we still have the top two positions of the agency which have been eliminated. It's run by two majors, and I heartily approve of their hire. I think they're doing what they can to change the agency. But I've heard the same thing for more than 20 years. It's incremental, and then it digresses. The problems many of you on this board have dealt with over the years have not been changed or corrected. They've been dealt with on a temporary basis.
Okay.
So
Any
I
questions?
thank you. I'm open for
Let's
questions.
see if anybody has questions, Mr. Burke. If no questions, then is Senator Ruff.
Kirby, you're referring to one class of complaints. we as legislators hear two classes of complaints. That the Game Commission is not responding like they should. Aren't you opening the door to having a lot of action out there that may be detrimental to everybody?
I don't think so, Senator Ruff, for this reason. I can't imagine that this board will do more than catalog the responses and look at the most serious ones. I don't think simply as a volunteer panel, unpaid panel, that they're going to try to micromanage or get into every complaint, but they're going to concentrate on the most egregious problems and bring those to the board's attention, but also to look for patterns that may not have been obvious. And one of the, quote, obvious problems is the rude demeanor of some officers, but not all. There are many fine officers out there.
And Senator, also remember that before they changed the name to conservation officers, that the old name they had, their duties were limited. Now, by saying conservation officer, they have the same duties and respect as a regular police officer, which would involve more. And that's why we are saying that at least we think that the public has a right to make a complaint to somebody other than this board that will hear that complaint. We have on record hundreds of complaints, and the complaints are going unanswered. So we got to say, but who can we turn to? And that's why this board is there.
Okay.
One last comment, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Birch, go ahead.
I realize that to those in the law enforcement community, this is a somewhat bitter pill, but sometimes the best medicine tastes a little rough at first, but I believe it will help the agency.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of this? If not, are there those that have an opposite view, would like to speak in opposite? Do you want to speak in favor? Well, come on up.
Just like to say good afternoon.
Good
My name
afternoon.
is Shannon Toombs. I'm a resident of Hanover County. I strongly support this bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Scott Woody. I'm a resident of Hanover County. I believe if the board is a catalyst to transparency, then I strongly recommend and would love your support with State Bill 838. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Senator Mason, do you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Could you just give us a quick snapshot of a complaint that you may bring if the board existed?
Well, I believe that, you know, as a with the complaints as a law enforcement officer, that when a law enforcement officer receives a complaint, it's an attack on, you know, their feelings, how they do their job. And it's not something, law enforcement officers don't want complaints.
No, Mr. Chairman, I understand.
And as a complaint for, I believe that the checks and balances need to be in place. And I believe the board could have some oversight and use as a panel to provide recommendations on how we can do the job better.
Okay, thank you. Are there those that would like to speak in opposition? Come on up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Sean McGowan. I'm with the Virginia Police Benevolent Association, and I represent the Conservation Police Officers chapter of the PBA. Senator Stewart, as you had mentioned, we did discuss this at length 4 years ago. We had several issues, and you and I both, my members and you, received a promise from the administration at DGIF that they would work on getting a professional internal affairs unit up and running to handle these types of complaints. And I did have a discussion with Senator Spruill this morning, and he's in full agreement that if they had done that, if they had followed through on that promise, we would not be here today discussing this bill. The solution to this issue is not in this bill. It is in moving forward on hiring a qualified professional as a colonel to run this agency, and it is then would be his responsibility to move forward on an internal affairs division that could handle these complaints just like every other police department in the Commonwealth is doing and many sheriff's departments. It's not in legislation. It's in the fulfillment of that promise that our members and you received when we worked through this issue before. And I'll answer any questions if anybody has anything for me.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the witness? If not, are there others who'd like to speak in opposition to this? If so, please come up. I see the Director of Game and Inland Fisheries. I don't want to put you on the spot, but you probably ought to at least just come up and tell us how you feel about this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Senator Spruill. My name is Bob Duncan. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. And let me just make sure at the outset, we don't have a position on this legislation. I would be glad to answer any questions that you have. I would like to give you a little background that may just help as you decide the merits of this. But again, we have no position on the bill. We have an internal affairs unit. We have a brand new captain that's over that unit. We have 2 nationally certified internal affairs investigators and supervisors. We've just added 8 new folks. They're not 8 new positions and new people, but they're existing officers who either have undergone or will undergo additional training so that they can be a force multiplier for our ability to do an improved job in the internal affairs investigative work. The other thing that I would mention to you is, it's already been pointed out, I serve at the pleasure of an 11-member board appointed by the governor. I would agree that our agency hasn't been perfect over the long haul, but I think we've made tremendous strides going forward. And I could give you some specific examples, but let me mention a couple things that I just want you to be aware of. We have a full HR shop now. That was something that we were without at times in the past. We have a very talented human resources shop. They're there to guide the different units and myself in different personnel matters. We utilize frequently the Department of Human Resource Management, or DERM as it's affectionately known. We work very closely with those folks. We've worked diligently to improve a lot of things, including compensation and classification studies and that sort of thing. But I will tell you, if and I receive, and people talk about, well, where do complaints go now? You're looking at the person who gets either the complaints or the accolades, and I will tell you that
they come to us.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, they come to you, and then they get referred to my phone too. And of course, when they come to me, then that's when I notify our law enforcement folks, and we begin a review of those matters and take whatever is the appropriate action based on the facts of the matter. The reason that things, I know it was mentioned by one gentleman, that these things are never discussed in open board meetings, there's a reason for that. Personnel issues and disciplinary actions are privileged information. And we discuss things in the closed session with our board relative to these issues, but it's unfair and it's not in keeping with state protocols and procedures and regulations to air disciplinary actions that are taken in public. And so there's a reason why, but rest assured that we do take these complaints very seriously. We take the demeanor and the attitude of our officers and all of our employees. We want all of our employees to be good ambassadors. And I think there's been some real significant improvement in that direction. People now understand that we all are there to serve the public. So with that said, I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have that I know the answers to.
Senator Black.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Bob, I appreciate your comments. My concern, I've been involved in conducting investigations and all of this sort of thing. My concern is that the officer who is subject to this investigation is isn't he going to be kind of hit from multiple angles? I mean, he got human resources coming down on him. He's got your existing processes coming at him. It's going up to your level to look at it. Now we've got this review board, and it's got a criminal defense lawyer on it, and not to be demeaning towards criminal defense lawyers, but they are not always entirely understanding of police officials. Now, there are exceptions.
Not the one standing next to you.
But now that he's not standing behind me, there are not too many exceptions. So seriously though, I'm concerned about the individual who's, he's got a wife, he's got a family, he's trying to keep his life going together, and all of a sudden, now he doesn't have the ability to go out and hire, a battery of lawyers to deal with all of these different things. It seems to me like it would be better to have a streamlined process where there is simply a single process that he has to confront and deal with. Is that not reasonable?
Yes, sir, Senator Black. Mr. Chairman, if I may. Senator Black, I certainly understand your points, and I may have not done a good job of explaining when I talked about our Human Resources Division and others there. Those folks are simply resources for our law enforcement officers who are tasked with these reviews. If they have questions about state procedures, then they can go to HR and find out. Now, again, we've got these trained folks in internal affairs, so they probably don't need a lot of oversight and review and that sort of thing. But no, and I want to also clarify one thing too. We talk about a complaint, say, against an officer regarding the officer's demeanor. Their roadside manner, if you will, or woodside manner, whatever the case may be. Those are handled by the officer, that individual officer's supervisor, because that's different than a more serious complaint of some kind of criminal wrongdoing or not doing their duty according to the rules and that sort of thing. So they're two separate issues. The immediate supervisor of the employee is notified when there is a citizen complaint about their behavior or their attitude or whatever. But if it's something more egregious than that, then it goes to internal affairs and they will do it, being mindful of the policeman's bill of rights and all these other things that weigh into the protection of that individual while the facts of the matter are being reviewed. So again, I don't think it's particularly an onerous process now, and I'll just leave it at that because again, I'm not going to comment on what the other part of that might do because again, we don't have a position.
Bob, and I commend you because things have gotten better since, but I was very outspoken on this issue, and I was very outspoken about officers treating people with dignity and respect, regardless of whether they may have to ticket them or arrest them. I was a Commonwealth's attorney. I used to put people in jail, but I tried to be respectful in doing it. And that was one of the things that I really focused on with your agency, and I think you've done a lot to improve that. I think that's where Senator Spruill is as well. I guess my question to you would be, are you willing to spend some time with Senator Spruill and maybe work on this to make sure that he feels like you have systems in place or that you are advancing this cause over the coming year, short of having to make another board, to report to another board? I guess that would be my question.
Mr. Chairman, I would welcome the opportunity. We want to improve and be the best public servants we can be, and we'll be delighted to work.
Senator Spruill, how you like that? That work for you, Senator Spruill?
I'll make some comments here. I don't know the brother, but I can get to know him, no problem.
It might be the best thing you're going to get out of this committee today.
Yes, sir. I can live with that.
Okay, all right. All right, is there a motion on this?
Mr. Chairman, I think that it would be appropriate for our board to, in light of the strides that the Game Commission is making as conservation police force, a professional police force, and I certainly don't think we'd want to start a trend here where we're creating a board to review law enforcement agencies. So I would make a motion that we pass the bill by for the year with a letter from the chairman to the Game Commission Board requesting that they review and work diligently to appoint a colonel to lead the agency and to work with the concerns that have been expressed by Senator Spruill and identified to Bob Duncan. Second.
Okay. Everybody understands the motion, which has been properly seconded. to carry over. Is that your motion, Senator Chafin, to carry it over for the year?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right. Can we do that on the electronic? Yes, we can. Great. The motion is to carry it over with a letter to Director Duncan, which I'm happy to do. Clerk, please open the roll. Change your vote.
Come on, brother.
14 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, thank you. Everybody except Senator Stanley. Senator Obenshain, I think you were next.
Mr. Chairman, thank you in the committee, please. Thank
Senator Sproul, thank you too. Senator Obenshain, you have Senate Bill 962.
I know, I've got talking points for Virginia Conservation Police Review Board.
All right.
No, I've got Senate Bill 962. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I know this is a bill that everybody on the committee has heard an awful lot about, and there are a lot of things that folks are saying that this bill is intended to address, and a lot of things it's not. Let me just say that this bill was supposed to be a simple bill. And it started out in a draft form that never saw the light of day, at least on this side of the chamber. Another version definitely saw the light of day on the other side of the chamber. I did a lot of surgery before anything was drafted and filed, but not enough. And Mr. Chairman, my office and I have been engaged for the past couple of weeks in a robust dialogue and discussion about this bill and about ways that we can avoid consequences that were in no way my intention to impose on anybody in Virginia. This bill deals with what's called herd share agreements. And
substitute on this?
Mr. Chairman, over the course of the past
Senator Obenshain, can we get the substitute
Yeah.
before us? I understand there is a substitute. Would you pass that out, please? Go ahead, Senator Obenshain. Is there a motion on the substitute? Motion properly seconded to adopt the substitute. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Substitute is before us once we get it.
Hey, ma'am, I think they're going to put it right here. It's going to be right here in just a second.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Senator Obenshain. I just thought we needed to get that before us.
No, that's all right. And I know there are a lot of people in the audience, and we were making changes until just a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to give you one. I promise. I promise.
Can we put this up on the television
Please,
screen
son, right here.
All right. Tell us what your substitute does. You might want to highlight the differences between
Yeah,
this
without
and
a
your
doubt.
original
First of
bill.
all, herd share agreements. Here's what they are. It has become a mechanism for folks to get raw milk in Virginia. And for a long time, there was discussion and debate about about whether raw milk ought to be available. It is, and it should be. And this in no way is intended to undermine that. People are buying shares of herds in order to, or dairy cows in order to obtain milk. And what this bill does is it simply is.
There's quite an interest in this bill, Senator Obenshain.
Why
don't we take a minute and let them get copies of this?
We're going to need more than 3 minutes on the floor.
I think we can give you a little extra time.
No, hang on. Not right now. All right, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Obenshain.
Here's the issue. So if I buy milk through a herd share agreement and I or a member of my family becomes sick because of the milk, we certainly want to make sure that others who have bought from the same herd, to the extent that they haven't gotten sick, that we have a way to go back and contact the owner of the herd and find out who else has bought milk and make sure that, to the extent possible, we notify them and that other people don't have health problems as a result. Now, what happened is these herd share agreements have become a vehicle across the country for obtaining raw milk. And in a number of states, West Virginia most recently, this bill was actually brought forward by advocates of food freedom to make sure that this practice, that herd share agreements were recognized in the law, were blessed, and that there was a formal way that they could take place. And a version of this bill, actually, that was a lot more like the House version with some differences, was what was introduced in West Virginia, was opposed by national dairy producers. And we introduced a version of that here in Virginia in order to accomplish this purpose. Now, here's some of the concerns that have been raised. And over the past 2 weeks, I've made a lot of changes at the request of many of the people who are in this room. And I can't think of a single change other than dropping the bill that I've not made. I'm really glad that they appreciate the changes. I think they're great changes too. So here's what they are. And number one, there was concern about having to file herd share agreements with the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Now that's in another bill. That was never in this bill. It was never in this bill. Second, there was concern about a criminal penalty, and that was in this bill. And I've taken it out, and I think that's right. It should be out. And this has simply a $100 civil penalty, which is exactly what the West Virginia bill has, and talked to some advocates this morning, made that change in order to do that and make sure that there are no criminal sanctions whatsoever. It was never the intention to impose any criminal penalty. Third is there was language in the original bill at lines 48 through 49 that created concern about creation of joint liability on the part of purchasers of share herds. Took that out. Took out those lines. There was concern.
That's an interesting question to me, and your bill doesn't address that. But if 25 people own a cow, and somehow that cow's milk makes somebody sick and kills them, aren't they all jointly liable for that?
I don't know, but this bill doesn't address that.
But
it doesn't alter.
But
it does not alter existing law whatsoever.
All right. So under the law today, I think they're all liable for that death. They could all be sued for that.
You're a much better lawyer than I am, and I will
I'm
trust
sorry to
you.
interrupt you. I think
but this bill was never intended to alter the law in that regard.
Okay.
It does not, and to the extent that there was concern that that language in here somehow did change the liability of people who were buying through herd share agreements, it's out. This bill does not do that. There was concern about placing a consumer advisory on the label saying, listing the dangers of unpasteurized milk. That was at 89 through 90, and that's out. All it says is this is unpasteurized milk now. That's it. No cigarette-style warnings, nothing like that. There was concern that this bill was going to give open access to VDACs or the health department to farms. That was never in my bill. There was language in another bill that allowed the Department of Health and Virginia Department of Agriculture unfettered access to farms. And I oppose that, and you know that because we have talked about that many times in the past. And there's nothing in here that alters. As a matter of fact, the only access to the farm that is granted through this is if somebody is sick and only to the extent already authorized by Virginia Code Section 32.1-25. It does not expand one bit the access that anybody has to the farm. There was concern about language that would not allow herd share owners to share milk with individuals that are not part of the herd share, somebody not on the agreement, like members of the household, guests. It was never the intention. And the language has benefited from the comments of many of the people in this room. We took that out and made it clear that that is not in any way prohibited. There was concern about this bill, that this bill was going to lead to additional regulations, and I think the original bill, or maybe the bill down the hall, had some language about promulgation of regulations. This does not. It's out. It never, I don't believe it was ever in this bill, but it's not in this. And finally, there was concern that this bill was not going to give enough time for farmers or consumers to adapt practices to get signed agreements to the extent that they weren't signed. And frankly, many of the folks in this room who've contacted me say, you know, of course we have signed agreements, and that's my understanding, is that that most people do have signed agreements. So this contains a delayed enactment provision in 2019. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, what this does is simply requires a signed agreement between herd share participants and the owner of the herd, and requires the herd owner to keep that agreement. That's pretty much it. And if somebody gets sick, they contact the Department of Health. The Department of Health goes to the herd owner and says, who else did you sell to? So we can contact them and let them know, don't drink the milk.
Okay. And that's the bill.
That's the bill.
All right. Any questions of the patron on this? Senator Black.
Just comment if I could. First, I applaud the patron for all of the efforts. You've obviously listened to all of the input and rewritten this bill about as much as any bill could ever be done. And I know that you are, that you are a friend of agriculture, but where I am, we have a large rural area of Loudoun County and Prince William County, and I know all downstate. And there are people, these are not people with lawyers and law books, and they don't get newsletters about what they do with how they slaughter animals, how they
We're not slaughtering any dairy cows.
No, I understand they're not doing, but what I'm telling you is what they do on these farms and small pieces of property. They'll slaughter some hogs. They'll bring in some chickens and they'll do herd sharing, and it's all done in a very informal way. It's just, somebody shows up and says, hey, could I get a gallon of milk for my kids? And yeah, sure, you can,
Well, that's not a herd share.
Well, okay, but the whole thing, and I know herd share, you have a group of people who go in and they participate in the milk production of a particular cow. I just, I don't know what problem it's addressing, and it's addressing it towards people who they're not into this. They just live kind of a free life in a rural area, and they really don't need the government coming in and peeking over their back and telling them what to do.
I'd ask you all if you hold your applause until we get to a certain point, please.
But in any event, that's just a comment on my part. I guess I grew up free, and I love freedom.
Senator Black, is there a question in there somewhere?
That's the extent of my comment.
I'll give you a chance later, but I thought you wanted to ask him a question. And if you all would just hold off until we can hear this bill, it might work out better if everybody can hear what everybody's trying to say, and the applause is distracting, although I know you all are excited by it. Senator Obenchain, do you have a response?
No, that's all right.
All right. Are there any questions for the patron, members of the committee? Are there those who'd like to speak in support of the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Eric Paulson with the Virginia State Dairymen's Association. We're a member organization that represents dairy farmers from across Virginia, and we stand in support of this bill. We have a number of producers in Virginia that hold grade A permits right now that either are considering or are participating in herd share agreements, but are concerned because and nowhere in code is the statute granting them the permission to do this. This bill would legitimize these operations so they wouldn't fear they could lose their grade A permit if the state decided that one day they weren't legal. We believe this bill will provide some basic protections for consumer rights. My own national organizations, International Dairy Foods Association, National Milk Producers Federations, are opposed to these bills, but we believe these are a fair compromise between the two sides. We supported the original language on both sides, and we still support that language, but we recognize the patron, the concerns he had and that he addressed working with both sides, and at this point we stand in support of this bill.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Martha Moore with Virginia Farm Bureau, and we too stand in support of this bill. And I think Mr. Paulson covered that there were other provisions in the bill that we supported in the original bill, but we realize that this is a process, and so we believe that this bill has addressed a number of the concerns raised by the people who might be opposed to the original bill, and would hope that you all would move this measure forward.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else who'd like to speak in support of the bill? All right, if you'd like to speak in opposition, this is your opportunity as well. But just let me say one thing. Senator Obenchain has drastically changed this bill since it was introduced, and I know it got a lot of attention. And so what you have is you have a bill that sets out the parameters for a document that says you all own or share the ownership of this herd, and if anyone gets sick, you have to tell somebody so you can stop other people from drinking the milk so they don't get sick. That's all that's left in the bill. And I just ask if you all would address those issues and not all of the other things that may have been in the bill before and are not anymore. Okay?
Yes, I just
All
have
right.
3 minutes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
Yes,
you.
my name is Christine Solom. I'm from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I lobbied for raw milk legislation since 1992. I've known by some people as the goat lady down here.
I remember you, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Anyway, some people don't want to remember me.
Well, I didn't say that.
I know you didn't. I started herd shares before I ever lobbied the General Assembly, and there's court documents for the Virginia Supreme Court which support what we're doing, not necessarily. But I went to circuit court. When I first started out in the 70s, we had some goats and people came for the milk. Then I was told I couldn't sell it to them. Well, I thought this was ridiculous. I didn't know anything about the law. Anyway, I got taken to court with an injunction because I started renting my goats. And I won.
And I would only remind you that there's a great line of
I know,
people.
but I'm
We-
going to go
we put a
fast. I'm going to go
time
fast. I'm going to
limit, so-
zoom over this really
but
fast.
I want you to have your opportunity to
It
speak.
went to the Virginia Supreme Court, and they ruled that renting of goats was assailed because title to the milk passed when I handed over to them, and I still held title to the goat. Went back to court. I sold an interest in the goat. That went again to the Virginia Supreme Court. The first was in 1983, Caldwell versus Solem. The second is Kenley versus Solem. And they said this and that I was doing wrong. The implication is if you do it right, it's not a sale. Now, what I have to say about the next paper that he drew up is it doesn't have to be in the Code of Virginia. It's already implications in the Virginia Supreme Court, which I went through. Now, I lost my husband 8 years ago. I don't have access to any milk. I have drunk raw milk for 43 years, and I'm still here. And I do not want to not have the milk. I own a share in a herd. I've owned it for several years now, and that is my milk. It's my cow. This is property rights, and it has been established by the Virginia Supreme Court in certain ways on implications. We do not need this bill, because if you're gonna do anything to herd shares, the thing to do is you've got to say that herd shares are, you cannot buy a cow, or you cannot buy a goat. That's the only way we're gonna treat it. Because here in his new bill, or the amendment in nature of a substitute, he said, shall not sell or resell. There is no resale here because there's never been a sale.
Yes, ma'am. He's not, that's not what the bill addresses.
That's what it says. That's part of the requirements. Shall not sell or resell. The law already says you can't sell it. Believe me, I know. But it is not a resale because you never bought it. It was your milk. This is my milk that I own in this share, and it is my cow, and that's property rights. And the government does not come in and write your agreement for you or your contract. That's an individual contract. They're going to do that. What's next? You're going to write a marriage contract? Also, how are you going to enforce this bill?
There are a lot of folks behind you who'd like to speak as well. I think we get your point.
Okay, I'm opposed to this bill, and I started it, and I will fight it all the way.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Come on up.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I'll be a lot quicker, I think. I just got a few questions for actually Mr. Obenshain here about this bill. I'm not going to be good at reading this amendment. I'm assuming that it's all good. I actually studied the other bill. I kind of knew what I was coming into there. But I have two questions for this. Is one, does me owning my own cow, is this going to affect me if I own my own cow? I milk my own cow. I share this milk with my family. I share this milk with my wife. I share this. Now, would it affect me sharing it with my neighbor?
I don't think it impacts
Okay.
that.
And then my other question is, like tonight, I'm actually supposed to be milking soon. I'm not going to be able to do it. So my wife is Yeah, well, my wife is 9 months pregnant, so obviously we have we've gotten our employee to do our milking for us. Does having an employee milk your cow for you bind you into this law? Does this?
I don't see how it possibly does.
Well, my question then is, a herd share is a system where I buy into owning my own cow, and I hire an employee to take care of that cow for me and to milk that cow for me. So I want to know. Well, that's what a herd share is. That's what my contracts say. I'm pretty sure we all have the same lawyers who write up our contracts. And so my question is, what's the difference between me buying my cow
share or just a whole
and hiring somebody to milk it for me and doing it on my farm or not having a contract? I mean, you said it's okay to not have a contract.
Mr. Chairman, I just don't think this addresses that at all.
Let me ask you, do you own your own cow or do you own a share of a cow with other people?
No, I own my own cow, but I do
this
also.
This doesn't affect you.
But I also own part of a cow through a share.
It would affect that. It doesn't affect the cow you own by yourself.
So what's the difference really between owning a cow?
What his bill tries to go to is because it's illegal to sell raw milk. This is a way to make it legal for people to all own a piece of this cow and to be able to get the milk from it and do it legally.
Are we doing illegal? Am I doing an illegal practice right now?
I don't think you're. There's a way. I wouldn't say it's illegal. This absolutely legitimizes it. The one condition it imposes on you is if you've got 50 people who own a share in this cow and somebody drinks it and somebody gets whatever you get, if you get sick, I don't know, you get botulism, then you got to tell somebody so that you can stop the other people from drinking the milk and getting botulism.
That's it.
That's all this bill does.
That's it.
So
and it doesn't affect you if you own it by yourself. It affects only those folks who own a share in a cow.
And I know I'm trespassing on the committee's time, but here's how it would work. I mean, if somebody gets sick, I mean, the only way that this ever comes to anybody's attention, Senator Black, I mean, is it not? We're not nobody's sending stormtroopers on anybody's farm. I live in Ag Central. If somebody gets sick and calls the Department of Health, and the Department of Health says it's because of a foodborne illness, they say, "Where'd you get it?" And you say, "I got it from Obenshain." under my herd share agreement. They call Obenchain and say, tell us who bought under your contracts so we can contact them. And I say, oh, gee, I've got this informal arrangement. I don't have written contracts. I don't really know.
Well, that's not a hurt share.
No, I get it. The worst thing that can happen to me is they give me a $100 fine as a consequence of this. Hopefully, I've got the names, I've got the contracts, and they say, all right, we're going to contact these other people and let them know that that this milk has made somebody sick, and don't drink it.
So
don't drink it.
I see that the language about the VDAX interaction is still involved. I mean, how is that? Like, I think
They're only involved if the Department of Health calls VDAX for support.
So we don't have to do the testing and the ongoing veterinarian client-patient relationship?
Once a year.
Once a year.
That's it.
But we don't have to have a contract to own our own cow.
Own your own cow? Heck no.
No, this doesn't, this has
No
no
way.
effect on your cow that you own by yourself. This is
So it's
just.
only when I share it with somebody.
It's just if you have a sharing agreement with others, yes,
But
sir.
I share it with my wife. I mean, that doesn't apply.
That's not
No, that's your,
So if
no.
you've got-
Y'all are one and the same.
If you've got
Under
50
the law.
people you have herd share agreements with so that the people in Russell County can get milk from owning a share of your herd, you just have to have written contracts with them.
Well, I mean, that's what a herd share is.
Well, you're good.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, then that's like a double negative, right?
All right, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I am Mark Wilkes. I am an owner and operator of Honeybrook Farms in Culpeper, Virginia. And I really appreciate all the work Mr. Obershane has done on this and the way he's been listening and the way you members have been listening to your constituents. But I still believe that this is a bill looking for a problem. My wife and myself and 9 children started farming 7 years ago. Since that time, our my wife and our 9 children, our 2 daughter-in-laws, now a son-in-law, and 9 grandchildren have joined us. And we started with 3 chickens, and now we support 4 families on the farm. A large part of that success was due to the private property rights of our state and our country. And these rights gave us confidence to be willing to invest our time and our limited resources into ventures that would allow us to succeed and prosper. In Virginia, there are thousands, and we have a number of them that are part of our herd share program. They are informed and educated consumers who are exercising their freedom to enter into contracts, which have very clear stipulations and guidelines in them already, allowing them to own a share in a dairy herd to receive the benefits from their investment. They drink raw milk from their cows. And as you can tell by the response to this bill, even with the changes on it, the farmers and share owners do not want their ability to enter into agreements that allow them to use their private property as they see fit to be infringed upon in any form.
Okay.
A herd share owner is simply an informed consumer. And the rewards of being a herd share owner is that they get to drink the milk that the cows that produce. There are no problems, health problems. The ones that have come up are far and few between. Over 11 million people in this country drink raw milk. There are not health problems with raw milk.
Well, this is not stopping you from drinking raw milk, and that's not what his bill attempts to do. And the only thing I would say is I respect what you're saying.
Yes.
We have gone over time. I'm still going to allow a couple more minutes, but if everybody could just kind of stick to why you don't like this part of the bill.
It infringes upon our property rights, which are
and that's what I
already
want to know.
protected.
That's what I want to hear.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Joel Salatin, Senator Hanger, wherever you are, good to see you, my senator. I would just speak, this is bad legislation. What are we going to do? Start singling out every possible food? Are we going to now start requiring that we license a chicken? What if somebody gets sick from an egg? Now we're going to have another law about regulations. If you get sick from an egg, you have to report that. If you get sick from somebody pulling carrots that had snails on them and you get something, or if somebody gives you green beans at a church potluck and you get, that's where you get botulism, by the way, green beans. Now we have to report that sickness. This is bad legislation to single out one commodity, one food item from every other food item and demand that if you get sick from that, you have to report it. It's a slippery slope And it's bad law to single out one commodity and create precedent to now next year have another commodity, next year have another commodity. It's just bad law.
All right, thank you. And if you all would just state your name and say where you are on this bill. I think we've got a sense of it.
Good afternoon. My name is Delois Stallman. I've called every one of your offices and emailed you all. I oppose this bill.
You oppose the bill?
I oppose the bill. In part, I oppose it simply because I already own this product. This is not a product that is.
We're going to give 30 more seconds. So I'd love for
Not
those
for
folks
sale on-
behind you to be able to say who they are and that they oppose the bill if they'd like to. Yes, ma'am. I apologize, but we've already gone
George
right much
Clark
over.
from Yorktown, Virginia. I'm against this bill, and I'll tell you why. I don't use this product. I don't know anything about it. But once some of my clients, I'm in the insurance business, heard about this, they were worried because a lot of these people use raw milk because of religious
oppose the bill?
purposes. I oppose it because this could also infringe on their religious rights. So it's many little problems here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. If you just want to state your name and your position.
Josh Basson. I'm a resident of the city of Alexandria. I own a herd share in a herd, and I oppose it mainly for two reasons, even in the amended bill. One, if it is disease-causing, I think the market will correct itself. The consumer will just stop, paying the boarding fee to the farmer, and then everyone else for that farmer will do similarly, and then the farmer will go out of business. One thing that no one's talked about is these increased vet
And again, sir, if the folks behind you would
Okay.
like to have,
The
I'd
increased
like for
vet
them to have
regulations.
time to state who they are and if
All
they
right.
oppose the bill or not. Thank you.
Okay. My name's Andrew Toe. I'm current president of Virginia Independent Consumers and Farmers Association.
Do you oppose this bill?
Yeah, but I also have to say that the public is not threatened by herd share milk because it doesn't enter the public realm. Last year, the year before, when there was a Golden Valley Guernsey's outbreak, the State Health Department's Rappahannock Rasputin Health District Office did not make a public announcement about the outbreak because the general public did not have access to the milk. The district director, Dr. Wade Karchner, told Food Safety News. The nature of herd share programs are such that we were confident that we would be able to effectively reach those who are truly at risk of illness. So
Ma'am.
they do not need to tell the
Excuse me,
public.
ma'am. We just really need to let everybody who wants to say who they
but
are
I
and if
think
they
that was kind
oppose
of relevant
the
that
bill. I
I'm
don't want to
sorry.
have to cut this off entirely, so if you just let the folks behind you have a chance to speak. If you just would state your name and if you oppose
Yes,
the
I'm
bill.
Joy Alexander. I'm from Avery's Branch Farms. We have a herd share there, my family, and I have two sentences. It would seem reasonable that my right as a mother to choose what I and my children will eat must be respected at least to the same extent as the woman's who, in the name of personal freedom, has the right to take the life of her unwanted unborn child.
And do you oppose the bill,
During
ma'am?
this short window of time, while you make your mark on Virginia's history as our elected officials, I respectfully challenge you to take up a cause more worthy of your calling. Thank you. I
Thank
oppose
you.
this bill.
Yes, sir. If you'd like to state your name and if you oppose the bill.
Jack Furman, Pittsylvania County, Our Father's Farm. We own a herd share operation. We oppose this bill. There's just no need for it. We have, just by the number of phone calls that your offices have received, you can see that we have a direct communication line. If somebody gets sick,
And sir,
we're
again,
gonna
I'm
communicate
sorry.
quicker
I'm
than
sorry,
anyone
but
else.
I don't want to cut it off. I want to let folks say who they are and if they oppose it. And if you would just do that,
I'm
otherwise
Joshua
we'll
Wilkes
just-
from Honeybrook Farms, and from Culpeper, Virginia. I do oppose this bill because I simply
Thank
see
you
it
very
as the
much.
camel's nose getting into the tent.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Dan LaFever from Nelson County. I'm a herd share owner. Think the state, it's going to cost the state an estimated $250,000
Do
a
you
year to
oppose this bill?
administer this.
Do you
and I
oppose this
oppose
bill? Thank you
it.
very much. Yes, ma'am.
Tanya Green, this bill is both unnecessary and completely unwelcome. I oppose this bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Samuel Madish from Berryville, Virginia. Thank you all for your service. I strongly oppose this bill, Senate Bill 962. It's an attack on our personal property rights and
Thank
also on its raw milk that many people need for their
Thank
health.
you.
Please
We
keep
understand.
raw milk free.
We understand. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Tom Furman from Fairfax, Virginia. I oppose the bill because I believe it's unnecessary.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Julia Baker from Dinwiddie County, and I oppose this bill strongly.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Larry Baker from Dinwiddie County. I also oppose this bill.
All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Patty Cheatham from the city of Richmond, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you.
I'm Kirsten Inocencio from the city of Richmond. I have one child who eats nothing but breadcrumbs and milk.
This is his entire diet. We are not allowed to have cows in the city.
Thank you.
Elizabeth Melson from Culpeper, Virginia, and I oppose the bill.
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer Golden from Lynchburg, and I definitely oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Philip Bracken from Rural Retreat, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Tim Furman from Pittsylvania County, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you.
I'm Sheila Furman, and I represent your new generation of voters, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm Adam Wilkes. I'm from Culpeper, Virginia, and I oppose this bill because I think it's an infringement upon property rights.
Thank you.
My name is Kenan Wilkes. I'm from Culpeper, Virginia, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you.
I'm Kim Furman from Gretna, Virginia, and I oppose this bill. It's
Thank you.
discriminatory because we like to drink raw milk.
Thank you.
I'm Hope Furman from Pittsylvania County, and I oppose this bill because it's unnecessary.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Long. I'm from Goochland County, and I oppose this bill, and raw milk tastes better.
Thank you.
My name is Samuel Furman, and I'm from Pennsylvania County, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you.
My name is Amy Chappell. I'm from Hanover County, and I oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Derek Waller. I just moved all the way from the dairy state, Wisconsin. They don't have this legal there. And I moved here, and I'm opposed to this bill.
You can't drink raw milk in Wisconsin? Holy cow. Thank you. Thank you. Nobody caught that. I said, holy
Ken
cow.
Maddich from Berryville, Virginia. I oppose this bill.
Thank you. Did everyone who opposed this bill have an opportunity to say so? Okay. I think we got it. I think we got it. I just don't want to exclude anybody. All right. Would you like to stand up if you oppose this bill? Thank you all very much. All right. If any questions of the paper, we got folks in the hall who don't like it too. Senator Overchain, do you want to finish up anything?
Yeah, if I can just wrap up. Look, these are great folks, and I appreciate the comments and the calls and the questions and the courtesy with which they have talked and communicated with my office. And we've really tried to make this bill do the right thing and achieve the limited purposes that it's going to achieve. I want to make one thing clear. I mean, of all these folks who came up here, I don't question their desire to have raw milk, and this isn't going to stop a single one of these folks from getting their raw milk or from entering herd share agreements. As a matter of fact, and I heard one speaker say it's ridiculous for us to make it illegal the sale of milk. Well, I have to tell you, this doesn't address that. As a matter of fact, it's already illegal to sell raw milk, and this makes it legal. This actually embeds in the Virginia Code the process by which this is happening, and it is intended to formalize that process. And Mr. Chairman, this bill just doesn't do a lot of the things that it's been suggested that it does. So, where I live, we've got 200 plus dairy farms in Rockingham County alone. And, a lot of those folks are adjusting to a changing marketplace. And they want to be able to enter these agreements as well.
All right. Any questions of the patron? If not, the committee operates on motion.
I move to report.
Excuse me? Oh, no. Did we adopt? I think we did adopt the substitute. Yeah, we adopted the substitute. All right, committee operates on motion.
I move to report.
There's a motion properly seconded to report the bill. Clerk, please open the roll.
No Stanley, no Stanley. There we go.
7 ayes, 8 nays.
Yes.
All right, you're sorry, Senator Overchain, your bill doesn't report.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I'd reverse the roll for a PBI on that.
I don't think we need it. I mean, if there's a motion with a second, I'll do it, but I don't see where it's necessary. I don't. Senator Serval, you think you've been patient and you've got a bill. Oh, were you next on the sign up? Senator Serval, I'm sorry. Senator Cosgrove was first on the sign up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a fairly simple bill, and I'll try not to milk it for all it's worth. Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 984.
Senate Bill 984.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And before we start, I believe there's a line amendment the council has for this.
Could you report that line amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. There are two line amendments. The first one starts on line 18. And after the words "that is," strike the words "forward of the transom and." And then on line 19, after waterline, insert the phrase "and forward of little a, the transom, or B, an integrated swim platform."
Is there a second on those amendments? Motion properly seconded to adopt the amendments as reported by staff. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, as amended, this bill allows a motorboat that is propelled by a means that is forward of the transom and below the water line to be accompanied by a person in the water. Current law allows a motorboat to be accompanied by such as a wake surfer only if the motorboat is propelled by an inboard motor. Mr. Chairman, in Virginia, already many ski boats have this type of propulsion where it's under the transom. However, Volvo Penta, which is a major manufacturer in my district, is going to be manufacturing boats that are going to have propulsion systems that are under the boat, away from the back of the boat, to propel that boat. The existing law isn't really enforced, but Volvo Penta wants to be a good corporate citizen. They want to make sure that they're manufacturing boats that comply with the Virginia Code. And that would just bring what's already happening into the
And Senator Cosgrove, so what these folks are doing is they're like hanging on real close to the stern of the boat to wake surf or something? I water skied. I'm an old person, so.
Sure. Well,
as
you know, Mr. Chairman, in a regular outboard or inboard outboard boat, the propeller is right on the back.
Right.
And, you know, where the skier maybe or the swimmer may be. And it's quite a danger at some times. Even if the motor's not running, you can cut yourself off.
I understand. We heard one of these before one time. So the idea is to get that propulsion away from the person if they fall forward against the boat because they're so close to the stern.
Well, yes, sir. That's one of the reasons. And again, I have some folks here from Volvo Penta. If they can just briefly.
You might be okay.
Okay.
Any questions of Senator Cosgrove?
Y'all don't want to talk, right? If it works, okay.
Is there anybody who opposes this? Is there a motion? Motion properly seconded to report the bill. Clerk, please open the roll. You're in good shape, I think.
Oh, Senator.
There's always one. There's always one.
I want Senator Cosgrove hanging 10 in the floor of the Senate on this one.
12 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Cosgrove. Senator Serval? Senator Serval, you got 951 left?
Yes, sir.
All right, tell us about 951.
Senate Bill 951 basically would impose a prohibition on hydraulic fracturing to obtain natural gas in the eastern groundwater management area. That's a administratively defined area, which is basically everything east of Interstate 95. It was established by DEQ for purposes of a groundwater regulation. Just a little bit of background. Right now, there's about 84,000 acres of land that's leased in the Northern Neck and the Middle Peninsula by a Texas-based group looking to do fracking. In response to that, several counties have taken action to regulate and prohibit fracking in the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula already, including King George, Westmoreland, King George, Westmoreland, and Richmond County. Essex County adopted comprehensive plan language to basically make it very difficult to do already. The problem is one leak of this stuff, this fracking chemicals or whatever, will spoil the Rappahannock River forever. The Rappahannock River is the longest free-flowing river in Virginia. it's not the longest river in Virginia, but it's the longest free-flowing river in Virginia. Localities have already started to take action on this, and I believe that we ought to prohibit it across the entire eastern groundwater management area. That's what the bill does, and I'm happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any questions of Senator Searle?
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Senator Peterson.
Have there been any existing incidents where fracking has contaminated a water supply or led to some physical or property damage?
In the United States, yes. There's been explosions, there's been contaminated
How about in
ground wells.
Commonwealth of Virginia, since our laws affect the Commonwealth of Virginia?
Well, the Commonwealth of Virginia, this new method of fracking has never been used. They use a different method in Southwest Virginia, but I believe the method that they're talking about using, the Taylorsville Basin, has never been used in Virginia. It's been used in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and some other places. Senator from Southwest, Senator Chafin could probably answer what goes on in Southwest better than I do, but they've been doing it there since the 80s, but again, I think it's a different method down there.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chafin.
We've been doing it out there since 1950s.
Okay.
And so, and have a long history of no contamination of water. And I might remind this board that, I might remind this august group that there is an agency that is charged with regulating the entire scheme of oil and gas exploration, and that agency has the ability to regulate any of these things. Let me ask, if I may.
Do you have a question?
I do have a question.
Senator Chafin.
Senator Searle, now, are you aware that there are people in the is it Taylorsville Basin? Are you aware that that several of them have leases and have given leases on their properties?
Yes, I said that a minute ago, and that's also, I think, what prompted the 4 localities that took action to prohibit it from happening in their counties.
Yes, sir. And further question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chafin.
Are you aware that they are gainfully paid? They're paid monetary consideration for those leases?
I would assume they did.
Mr. Chairman, would further
Senator
question. Could the senator tell me his thoughts on if the Commonwealth takes away those rights of those individuals, those property rights? Would that not be a taking without due consideration to those individuals, for which this Commonwealth could very well find itself sued and liable for?
Well, what I would say to the senator is a couple things. Number one, I've never litigated a takings case, but I've certainly made myself familiar with takings law as the different cases have come down. We had to deal with a big constitutional amendment a couple of years ago, which involved the Kelo case and a lot of that, and they teach us all this in law school. But with regard to whether this is a taking, I would submit that if this is a taking, then the uranium ban that's been on our books for a long time is a taking, which I think that was done in response to somebody either getting a lease or coming very close to getting a lease. We also regulate lots of other property rights in the state that aren't a taking. If you look at the cases that I think that it would be analyzed under, it's Penn Central and Lucas. Those are the last 2 major U.S. Supreme Court cases dealing with it. Lucas had to deal with a guy who bought a beachfront lot in South Carolina, and the South Carolina Coastal Management Commission adopted rules which basically said he couldn't build a house after he bought the lot for $1 million. And the U.S. Supreme Court said that if you completely devalue a lot, that's a taking. But if you only partially devalue it, it is not a taking, which is what this would be. And Penn Central was the 1978 case where there was the Penn Central Railroad Station, where the city of New York prohibited them from building 20 stories on top of an existing railroad station. U.S. Supreme Court said, you can keep using your property, you can keep having a railroad station there, you can keep doing other things on it, unless you take away most of your property rights or all of your property rights. That's when the Constitution kicks in, but not when they take away 1 or 2 or 3 of the bundle of sticks that we normally talk about in law school about your various property rights. And so I also, if you'd like to read it, have a 97-page law review article, University of Cincinnati, which says that fracking bans are not takings because in New York they banned fracking in 2014 and nobody there has found it to be a taking yet. So I would submit that we're in pretty safe legal territory.
Mr. Chairman, further
Senator
question.
Chafin.
Yes, sir. You mentioned the uranium industry, but isn't it true that industry did not have any leases out there for which monetary consideration had already exchanged hands.
I don't know the answer to that. I was probably about 4 years old or 10 years old or something when that went down, but my understanding is the uranium
Senator
ban.
Searle, I want
You might be able to answer me on
weigh
that.
in here real quickly. In a little bit to address Senator Chafin's question, because he does raise a good concern. The problem is, I think those leases were granted without any proper zoning authority to do the activity. And so I'm not sure that they had a vested interest in those leases to start with, because they didn't know whether or not they were going to get the zoning authority to do the activity. Certainly in the area he's talking about, I know it's covered out in your part of the state. So that may address that question.
Mr. Chairman, further question.
Senator Chafin.
Are you aware that there is an acreage affected of about 84,000 acres?
That's what I said earlier, although there was a lot of noise in the room, you might not have heard me.
I didn't hear you, Mr. Chairman. Further question.
Senator Chafin.
And are you also aware that the amount of money compensation should it become unlawful to frack that area could be in the hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars?
I have no idea, and I have no idea how that would work. As I said, I don't think that it's a taking under my evaluation of the law, but I'm not I've never litigated a takings case in my life. But I would also say that if the possibility, or if this gas that were there were so valuable, it's not clear to me why there has been zero activity or action on these leases in the last 2 or 3 years. I think they got them. They got the leases, I want to say, 3 years ago, and I think they did 1 or 2 wells, and there's been zero activity for like the last 2 years. I think it's my understanding.
All right, Senator Chafin, that help you? I
Mr. Chairman, I
don't think it's going to help you vote the bill, vote for the bill. But does that answer your question? Maybe I should say. Any other members have questions for the patron?
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
And I think Senator Chafin got to the points I was going to ask, but I know a little bit about oil and gas leasing. You have property rights, then you have what are called mineral rights, which are actually the subsurface rights to the extraction rights.
Right.
And where you have an oil and gas lease, that basically is you give somebody effectively an easement, a right-of-way, where they can drill on that land and extract whatever they find. I guess my question is, where you already have an existing lease, it's been negotiated, theoretically a fee's been paid to do it, and then you pass a law saying, oh, by the way, you can't use hydraulic fracking, which is, to the best of my knowledge, the only way you can bring out natural gas, at least in this part of the world. How can that not be a taking?
Because the vested rights doctrine that I'm aware of doesn't kick in until the government is granted a right. And until the government's granted that license to that right, I don't think there's anything if the government takes away something that's never granted, I don't think that becomes a taking. Right now you currently have the ability to, everybody, I think, well, not everybody, every property, a lot of people drill a well. And DEQ just imposed some significant well drilling restrictions in the Eastern Groundwater Management Area. Senator Stewart's very aware of it because all of his constituents fall within it, as do most of mine, if not all. And we regulate subsurface rights all the time, limit them, prohibit them in a lot of different ways. And if you're familiar with takings theory, I can send you the law review article. There's lots of different ways that it's evaluated and has been justified by the courts over the years. And so just because somebody made a contract, they never got government approval for it, they just got a contract and maybe potentially do something in the future, doesn't convert it into some property right that they can sue the government for.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black.
Question. Does the Eastern Virginia Groundwater Management Area encompass southwestern Virginia?
No. And by the way, I have a line amendment to that point.
Senator Black, just for your information, it's pretty much east of
95.
That's not exactly, but that's
Mr. Chairman, I have a line amendment I forgot to offer to that to just make clear.
You want to report that line amendment?
Sure. You have it? Yeah.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, on line 12, it's just one line amendment. After the words fracturing in, add the words any locality located in. So it reads, no person shall conduct any hydraulic fracturing in any locality located in the Eastern Virginia Groundwater Management Area.
Is there a motion on that amendment? Second. Motion properly seconded to amend as reported. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Peterson.
And let me just, I'm going to say a quasi-friendly amendment. We had the issue of mine voids about 5 or 6 years ago, where we passed laws that the Supreme Court specifically found did not impact the rights of people that had already had leases in the mine voids. Would you be willing to have an amendment on your bill that said specifically it would not affect current private property rights?
No, not
Okay.
that, not that. I don't, because that, I think, defeats the primary point of the bill.
Nope.
All right. No other questions. Do you have those that would like to speak in support of the bill?
Yes.
Please, if you want to speak in support of it, please come up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Brian Hoffman, Programs Manager with Friends of the Rappahannock, based in Fredericksburg and operations and offices throughout the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula. With several colleagues and other partner organizations in this room today, we've been working on this issue with our localities for the last 5 years. We've had extensive sessions and meetings with planning commissions and board of supervisors in all of the counties that currently hold leases. That's in the Northern Neck, King George County, Westmoreland County, Essex County, Caroline County, King, Queen County. As the senator mentioned, we've had local ordinance language adopted that drastically restricts the ability for any fracking natural gas operations in King George County and most recently Westmoreland County. Richmond County, adjacent to Westmoreland County, enacted a ban on hydraulic fracturing activities within their county, and Essex County has taken the steps to amend their comprehensive plan to further address local protections against any potential impacts from natural gas and fracking particularly. Now, there has been ample opportunity for the community members and the leaseholders individually to come and speak at these planning commission sessions and the board of supervisors. And we have 84,000 acres. That was the number presented by both Senator Chafin and Senator Serville. Those local ordinances restrict the areas in which those activities can happen to the point where there's only about 9% of the county left in King George that's eligible for those. So this would further provide protection to all those counties impacted, which was what those localities decided for themselves. And we're very interested in support of this bill to protect the natural resources of the Rappahannock River, which provides millions and millions of dollars in seafood, which could be impacted by any sort of spill. The Potomac Aquifer, which would have to be drilled through with this process, provides drinking water to several million people. To the point where these activities and the Rappahannock River was listed as number 5 most endangered river in the United States by one of our partners, American Rivers. We don't want to see this happen. It's a threat to our rural economy with our seafood industry, the rural nature of these communities, and the localities' actions on that speak for themselves. Thank you
like
very
this
much.
bill?
I do like this bill.
Thank you. You got more folks behind you who'd like to say something. Yes,
Good
ma'am.
My name's Linda Muller. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. I'm from Stafford County. I'm also the fracking co-chair, issues co-chair for the Virginia chapter of Sierra Club, and I'm here in support of Senate Bill 951. And for some of you who may not be aware that the Eastern Virginia groundwater management area starts as far north as Fairfax County and runs along Virginia's eastern border all the way down to Virginia Beach. It's an enormous management area, but the primary area that's being proposed for fracking is in the Taylorsville Basin, which includes the counties that have been mentioned already by Mr. Serville. I need to point out, though, that the Eastern Virginia Groundwater Management Advisory Committee issued their final report just last year. And the report is eye-opening with some of the statements. And I'd like to provide just briefly a couple of those statements in the report that was provided to the Department of Environmental Quality and the Virginia General Assembly. Quote, the Virginia Potomac Aquifer is facing significant sustainable challenges. Quote, available groundwater supplies in the Eastern Virginia groundwater management area are insufficient to meet long-term demands of current and future groundwater users. And these groundwater resources are critical to the health, welfare, and the economic prosperity of Eastern Virginia. Now, hydraulic fracturing is a heavy industrial process that utilizes enormous quantities of water, anywhere between 1 to 8 million gallons.
Ms. Muller?
Yes.
I just wanted, we know you like
Okay,
this bill.
all right, so.
You got a lot of folks who'd
all
like
right,
to speak as
so
well.
my last sentence. What we didn't recognize then, because a lot of people have leases before the 2017.
You're almost out of time and others want to
We
talk.
understand now, and so in order to protect our groundwater resources, please support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please come up. And just remember other folks want to speak too.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Town, Virginia LCV, we support the bill.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Harrison Wallace, CCAN and Chesapeake Action Network Action Fund, and we support this.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Senators, my name is Pat Calvert, Virginia Conservation Network. We are full support of SB 951.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Peggy Sanner, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, we support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there those that have a different perspective on this? My mic working?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, David Clark, representing the Virginia Oil and Gas Association. The members of VOGA include those who are actively producing natural gas in the Commonwealth of Virginia, primarily or almost exclusively now in Southwest Virginia. We do oppose Senate Bill 951 as an anti-business measure and one with an unwarranted encroachment on property rights. To be clear, I think as perhaps Senator Peterson was suggesting, a ban on fracking in Eastern Virginia is a ban on producing natural gas in Eastern Virginia. You will not produce gas in Eastern Virginia today without fracking. With this bill, landowners in Eastern Virginia will be deprived of the right to produce their natural gas. And not only will they be deprived of their rights to receive lease payments, but also to receive royalty payments if and when gas was ever produced in Eastern Virginia. Our primary objection to this bill is that it's unnecessary because Virginia has a comprehensive and proven regulatory program governing gas and oil operations in Virginia. This program, along with laudable efforts from the industry, has resulted in a remarkable record of safe and environmentally sensitive production in Virginia. We do recognize and acknowledge that the geology and environment in Eastern Virginia is different than that in Southwest Virginia. And that is precisely why this General Assembly enacted additional restrictions and hurdles for the industry to overcome if they were ever to attempt to produce any natural gas or oil in Eastern Virginia. The code and regulations have substantial additional requirements that apply in Eastern Virginia and do not apply in the rest of the Commonwealth. And these requirements include notice to the public with an opportunity for public comment, notice to local officials with an opportunity for input, an extensive environmental impact assessment that looks at wildlife, aquatic life, water and air quality, land and water resources. And finally, upon the urging of the General Assembly and particularly Senator, your chairman, Senator Stewart, a few years ago, DMME and DEQ entered into a memorandum of agreement that formalized DEQ's role in supervising oil and gas operations in Eastern Virginia if they were ever to occur, and it requires DEQ to have the opportunity to receive comment from the public and other state agencies. They have to ultimately approve the environmental site assessment, and it requires the DMME take their recommendations into account when if they were to impose any conditions on any permits that were sought in Eastern Virginia. Just to clarify, there have been no wells drilled in Eastern Virginia based on the leases that have been described here today. Those leases were put in place between 2010 and 2014,
David,
and there have been no permit applications on those.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
There are, mic's working or not, there are currently no active wells in that region, correct?
Correct.
There's some speculation about wells.
Speculation about wells, yes, sir.
There's about 1.5 million people who depend on that aquifer for drinking water, somewhere around there. Is that correct?
I accept that. I don't know.
And all the businesses within that region rely on that, including the entire seafood industry. Is that accurate?
certainly
the oil
rely
and
on
gas
Chesapeake
industry
Bay.
made any sort of, taken any steps, measures? Do you have any idea what those folks in that area could do if that aquifer were contaminated for a different water supply?
Well, I would say, Mr. Chairman, no, because no one in the industry has actually moved in the direction of actually drilling there. As I said, no permit applications have been made. So the industry has.
Well, I guess with regard to the leases, y'all haven't considered that? I mean, what happens if that aquifer is contaminated to the site? You can't clean an aquifer, can you?
I'm not a scientist in that fashion, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that DMME and DEQ would have the opportunity to have input on how any drilling would take place.
Okay.
And also, for the benefit of the committee, fracking would take place at roughly 5,000 to 10,000 feet below the surface in that area. The aquifer, as I understand it, is 1,000 to 2,000 feet. Scientifically, it's been shown that any fracking fluids that were put into the fracs at the lower levels would never work their way up into the aquifer. As I said, we understand and respect the fact that you are drilling through the aquifer.
But that's the concern
in
for the
some of that
folks.
area, and we understand, and we believe that's why why the General Assembly put those additional restrictions in place a number of years ago. I just finally would say that we believe that this is sending the wrong message to the business community, that we would be banning an activity without any evidence that that activity has caused a problem in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Miles Morin with the American Petroleum Institute. 10 years ago, natural gas prices were about $15 per 1,000 cubic feet, and today they are $3.60 per 1,000 cubic feet. And that is a result of this 60-year-old technology, fracking, married with horizontal drilling, which has allowed us to access shale. But is fracking safe? Over 2 million wells have been fracked in the United States, and no fewer than 7 government agencies and several academic institutions have completed reputable studies that show.
I'm sorry, can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And I don't dispute that fracking is safe, quite frankly. Are we doing it through aquifers that are comparable to the Potomac aquifer?
Yes, sir.
Where is that?
All over the country. We drill through aquifers almost every well that we drill.
Where, I just don't know, so where?
Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in West Virginia, and in Texas.
And they have aquifers comparable
And Louisiana.
to the
Louisiana
Potomac?
has a ton of wetlands, and they're.
No, I'm not talking about wetlands. I'm
Right.
talking about a giant freshwater lake that stretches from Fairfax to Virginia Beach to Richmond, that's beneath our feet, 3,000 to 7,000 feet under the ground, that's full of drinking water, that kind of an aquifer. Do we, and I don't know, honestly, so do we have folks drilling through things like that successfully?
I can look into it and get back to you about geology elsewhere in the country, but I don't know that right now, but it'd be pretty easy for me
I
to find
don't think
out.
we do, that,
Okay.
in all honesty.
Okay. Oh, well, I'll just finish by saying that a Duke University study funded by the Natural Resource Defense Council found that fracturing is not contaminating groundwater in West Virginia. And we have not had any instances in Virginia of contamination of groundwater, permanent degradation from fracking after nearly 10,000 wells fracked. So I hope you'll oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Evan.
Could I ask a question?
Help yourself,
gentleman?
Senator Evan.
Sure. Well, first off, you made a reference to Pennsylvania fracking there. And I know that between 2007 and I guess 2010 or 12, there were at least 2,800 water-related complaints that have been investigated by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's oil and gas program, and that people complained about the smell of the water, yellow tint, those sorts of things. Do you think any of those complaints, those 2,800 complaints, were valid, or?
I have no way to know.
Okay.
I can tell you that the extensive studies that have been done in multiple different universities and agencies have found what I said they found is that there's no extensive link between the two. But I can't, I'm not in Pennsylvania, I can't tell you.
Okay, just because you had referenced it, but thank you for answering the question.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. Keith Martin with Virginia Chamber of Commerce. As you and the members of the committee know, affordable, reliable energy is important to our economic competitiveness. We see natural gas as a good bridge to help us meet our energy needs in the future. It also helps us reduce the amount of carbon that we release. So for those reasons, we hope we don't limit our ability to use our own natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask him a question?
Yes.
Sir, does Virginia Chamber of Commerce support natural gas exploration in the Eastern Virginia groundwater management area?
We have no position on where it's used or how. We want it to be done environmentally safe. We have our blueprint 2025, as you have probably seen, and we have a big chapter on environmental safety and usage, and environmental component of this is also very important to us.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Chris Nolan with McGuire Woods on behalf of CNX Resources, formerly known as Consol Energy. We're a natural gas producer in Southwest Virginia. We also operate in other states, but our Virginia presence is located in far Southwest Virginia, and we also oppose the bill.
Thank you. And Mr. Nolan, I can assure you this has no impact on Southwest Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that completely, but I think you know that bills like this have a tendency to grow over time, if not within the same session. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak in opposition? All right, if not, Senator Serval, do you want to wind up?
The only thing I would say is, I forget which of the folks opposed said it, but somebody said we shouldn't act unless we see there's evidence of a problem with fracking in Virginia. And I would submit to the committee that if we wait until there's a spill in the aquifer, that's too late, because then the aquifer is ruined. So we followed that approach with a few other things. For example, coal ash. Now we have a multi-billion-dollar problem on our hands. I think it's better to act ahead of time and be safe, especially when we've got the drinking water of 1.5 million people involved, including, by the way, my house. I'm in the only private water system in Fairfax County, and 110 people have been using that well for almost 80 years now. And there's a lot of people from Fairfax all the way down that depend on that for water.
All right. Senator Peterson?
Yeah, I've listened to both sides, and I appreciate both sides, because I know just enough on this issue to be dangerous, and I appreciate the comments of the environmental community. I appreciate what Senator Serval has done. I don't like the idea of just an outright prohibition with, frankly, modest evidence at this point on the points, but I understand the concerns. I think a moratorium might be a better way to go at this point. So what I would do is I would move to amend his bill to change it from an outright prohibition to being a 4-year moratorium, if I could get a second on that.
Is there a second on that? I think I heard a second. We heard a second. Okay, there's a motion properly seconded to reform this to a moratorium for 4 years. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We got one no. Ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Can you do that language now, Chad? Report it to us.
It would just take an enactment clause on the end of it.
Yeah, so
I know you're a good lawyer, but let's let Chad do it.
Provisions of this act shall expire July 1, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, on line 17, there would be a new enactment clause that says, 2, that the provisions of this act shall expire on June 30th, 2023, I believe. Is that right?
22.
22.
It's 4 years, it's 2.
4 years.
22. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, with that amendment being reported and agreed to, I'd move to pass the bill as amended.
Okay. Is there a second motion?
I have a substitute motion, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Chafin.
I move to report the bill and the bill be re-referred to finance.
Second.
Well, let me ask staff, did we get a request from finance for this? No. We got the chairman right here.
Mr. Chairman, as staff reviews me, they had not told me it had been suggested to me that there would be potential impact. I'm not sure that there would be impact to the state budget, however, but it depends on what the committee does. I mean, we can look at it up there, but that's we're not requesting it.
Okay.
Chairman, I've made my motion, my substitute motion. It's been properly seconded.
All right, there's a substitute motion properly seconded.
And I would like to comment on it.
To report and re-refer to Senate Finance.
Yes.
Is there any discussion?
If you'd allow me to comment on that.
Senator Chafin?
I think with all due respect to everyone who's grappling with this issue, it's reckless of this committee to embark on something like this, a moratorium or a prohibition, when this bill would, I believe, result in a legal taking of gas rights that'll subject the Commonwealth to claims. And I think this is one of those things, like we've heard about bills, you don't know what's in it and you won't know what happens until you pass it. But if you want to pass this thing and you want to find out how many people are going to sue the Commonwealth and whether or not they're going to be able to get their case through federal court or through state court, I can think of several hundreds of millions of dollars of reasons that might subject this Commonwealth to a tremendous, tremendous debt to these individuals. So, the only way to extract this gas is by fracking. You heard it. And if you put a moratorium on it, or if you put an outright ban on it, there will be potentially a budget impact that should be considered by finance. Because it was very telling when Senator Servell, when it was suggested by his law partner that he
Former law partner.
Okay, that he whether or not he would agree to an amendment that would have protected the rights of those individuals who lease those lands. He didn't want to agree to that, okay, because he knows the issue here with regard to liability to the Commonwealth of Virginia. So I say these comments in support of my motion to re-refer this matter.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Black, is this discussion on the motion?
It is a discussion on the substitute motion.
There's a motion to report and re-refer Senate
Yes.
Finance. It's appropriate for discussion
Yes.
on that motion.
And I agree with the motion to send to finance. There's been generations of fracking taking place in Southwest with virtually almost no problems whatsoever. When you frack, you drill through with casings and you go down through the aquifer, and it's not just stuff blowing through, but there is a casing that is put down that goes through there that's sealed, and nothing comes out of it within the aquifer, and then it goes much farther deep, much more deeply, and that's where the oil comes from. We've got 2 million of these wells in the country operating successfully, not causing any problems. And we are beginning to export liquefied natural gas, and within the next 5 years or so, it will be just the 6 trains of liquefied natural gas are going to reduce the national trade deficit $50 billion per year. So I just think it's a big mistake for the nation and for the Commonwealth to cut off our access to this, particularly where we have a very, very safe process in place.
Mr. Chairman, can I say something, or am I not on the committee? I don't get to talk.
We probably ought to.
Okay.
Let's hear the motion. The substitute motion is to report the bill and re-refer to Senate Finance. Clerk, open the roll. I do. Oh. No. I need to change that. How do I hit his? It's not doing it. Okay.
5 ayes, 9 nays.
The motion fails to report. So the primary
motion.
was to report the bill.
As
Clerk,
amended.
as amended. Clerk, please open the roll.
Where's Obi-Wan?
9 ayes, 5 nays, 1 abstention.
Your bill reports. Thank you, Senator Serval.
Thank you.
Gosh, Senator DeSteph, I apologize. You've had to wait a long time, but you're finally up.
That's more than fine, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we did have a substitute, but I'm not going to present it because the substitute provided more problems than it was worth. So if you have the substitute, if you could, just fold it and throw it in the trash. Perfect. So with that, Senate Bill 990, it's Stormwater Control Board regulations. And today, in code and in regulations, we have very complicated, complex formulas. When there's mistakes in those formulas, it's much easier to, well, it's very difficult to change the mistakes. Through our code, it takes a legislative cycle. Through regulation, it takes 18 to 24 months to fix those very complicated, complex formulas and equations. And I'm not aware of any other place in the code where we have these complex, very, very complicated formulas. So what we're attempting to do here, and what the intent of the bill is to take these complex equations and formulas out of the code and put them into regulation and guidance so they can be changed easily. There are mistakes in there. We've known since, heck, I've been elected up here, we've had problems with the formulas, whether it's a Virginia Tech model or the formula that's actually written into our code. To change it, it's been extremely difficult. And frankly, with every single scenario that would pop in, I don't think we're ever going to get it 100% correct. So with that, this bill attempts to take those regulations, take those complex formulas and put them down into guidance so they can be referred to by code and referred to by regulations, but easily changed when a problem is identified and found. Now, there were some folks who were in opposition to the substitute. I believe they're in support of this. DPOR will probably say they have no position on this, which I'm sure they haven't had a chance to vet it up through the governor. That's all I've known. I've not had, all I know, I don't think I've had anyone come in support of or in opposition to this after that.
Senator Stuff, just so I understand what the bill is, you have engineers in your area who have difficulty with these DEQ formulas. Is that, do I understand it correctly?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, it's not just in my area. We do have them from all over the state. We have, I've actually had folks call me and talk to me that develop in other areas as well. But if you're doing a duplex, multifamily, specifically in Virginia Beach, we don't have water quality problems. We can meet those all day long. We have water quantity. If it's a high tide and we've had some rains, you can stick a pen in the ground and that's your water table. So these are very, very critical for us. I've talked to a few engineers that when I asked them the details of how are you making this work, they said, well, we just kind of changed the formula in the spreadsheet a little bit. Well, that's not really what we should be doing.
But I want to make sure I understand. They're trying to do calculations with regard to stormwater management.
Correct.
And what you're saying is there's something fouled up with the DEQ formulas or something. Do I understand this correctly?
That's correct. And their DEQ has, and will, I'm sure, stand up and say we've got an error or two in our formulas.
Well, let me ask you this too. You say that you've got engineers around the state. Do you have any of them here with you to testify about this?
No, actually, I've not invited any engineers up here. Okay. This was a pretty innocuous bill.
And the reason I ask this is because I'm fairly familiar with this, and as in my practice as an attorney, and I work with quite a few engineers. I've never had one complain about it, so that's why I want to make sure I understand what you're doing here.
Got it. We have, and nowhere else in the code do we have calculus embedded and formulas
And
I wouldn't
truly,
even know it was calculus, to tell you the truth. That's over my head.
truly, when you lay out these equations, what you'll see is, and I think we fixed, and I mean, I'd have to defer to Deepore on this. I think we fixed the divide by zero issues, but I know we have some more problems with it that, again, Deepore can easily fix when they're identified.
DEQ.
I'm sorry, DEQ can easily, I apologize. Sorry about that, Commissioner. DEQ can easily fix when they're identified.
He's a director, by the way.
Director, Commissioner, Mr. Paler. Again, when they're identified, they can easily fix them, but in regulation, it takes 18 to 24 months, and in statute, it takes us a year to come back and correct them.
Okay.
So this really makes it a lot easier for them, and truly is something that makes it easier for the process to happen the way it's supposed to. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Do you have anyone you'd like to speak? I'm sorry, Senator Mills.
I just don't see what we're striking. I see what we're adding. What are we striking?
We're not striking anything out here. What we're doing is we're providing DEQ the opportunity or the ability to take these out of our code and regulations and put them into guidance so they can make corrections easily. And I would actually have to refer back to the attorney on if we're striking anything or not in here. I don't believe we are.
Mr. Chairman?
Who was that? Oh, Senator Marston.
Thank you.
It's like the voice from the back of the room or something.
Hello.
Senator Marston.
Senator Staff, does this take us out of the APA process? And, are these guidance rules, if you will, are they enforceable?
With that, Mr. Chairman, Senator Marston, I would like to phone a friend and ask Mr. Paler, Director Paler, if he can answer that, because I'm not sure on that.
Okay, thank you.
David, hold on one second. We want you to speak to this, David, but let me just get to one point first, if you don't mind, Senator Marsden. Do you have anybody in favor of this?
Actually, I believe I do.
To speak to it?
I believe I do.
Let's go ahead and let your folks speak to it first.
Sure. Maybe, maybe not. They don't have any issues with it and help.
Is there any opposition to this?
There we go. Nobody's opposed to it either.
Anybody you'd like to speak in opposition? Okay. David, now it's time for you. Would you please come up and tell us about this? I know we have heard renditions of this over the past couple of years, I think, if I remember correctly. And he was going to try to work on it, but I just want to make sure I'm thinking of the same thing.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Director David Paler. We don't have a position on the bill. It would require an action through the APA process to pull these out of the regulations, but the idea is of this bill is, as I understand it, is to make the any changes in formulas that come up over time quicker to put into guidance. So that's it. It's I think, as I understand the senator's motives, it's that we have over time found corrections that that we can make, and so that I believe that's what the bill's aimed at.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Marsden,
if I could, would those guidance documents then be enforceable?
Yes.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions for Director Palin?
Otherwise, you might see me in opposition rather than no position.
And Dave, maybe I don't understand what we're doing here, but are we changing anything, or are we just moving language out into something else?
We're the goal, as I understand it, is to move those formulas out of regulation and into guidance, so that they can be changed more quickly. I know there's been a concern about public input and guidance. I would say that we, to to the extent that these things end up in guidance, if it's the pleasure of the body, we certainly would continue to try to be as transparent as we can. It's very technical stuff. It is calculus. It's over my head, and I've had many discussions with a number of stakeholders about how it works. And
Mr. Chairman. Okay. Senator Hanger.
The question to Director Baylor, I guess, and to Senator DeSteffe. It is complicated, and I understand now. I think where Senator DeSteffe wants to go. I was wondering if we continued the bill, do you have like an expert advisory panel or something on these particular engineering things that you require? Could you come up with perhaps working with him with a recommendation for next year on how we might make it more efficient?
We do have an advisory panel. It's not one that we require, but we do have a group of folks that we meet with. From most of them represent the business community and the consultant community, and we have consulted with them over the years to try to make sure that things that we do make sense and that we've considered all the issues. So,
right. Mr. Chairman, it seems to me Senator DeSteffe is concerned about the efficiency of having it right and being flexible to make changes as needed in a more efficient manner and timely manner, if that's something that could be worked out.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Hanger, if I may. I'm not trying to change the formulas here. I'm trying to make it easier for DEQ when they get, and they're not talking to me about this. I'm not on their panel. They're talking to engineers from around the state. When they identify a formula glitch or a formula error, I'm trying to make it easier for them to correct it and put it out. If we don't do something like this, and it takes 18 to 24 months, this doesn't change the formulas. It doesn't change anything in the stormwater regulations. All this does is allow them the ability to take it, again, it is calculus, to take it out of regulations and put it into guidance so they can correct the errors as they're identified by the engineers.
Do we need a bill to do that, Senator DeSteffe?
We actually do need a bill to do that, and Director Paylor.
Director.
I believe the answer
and the reason I asked
yes,
that, Senator
from the
DeSteffe, I'm one of these unusual people who is a lawyer by trade, and I have to buy these code books every year, and I have to pay for them, and they're expensive. And I hate having to buy a supplement, for a paragraph, because that supplement's going to probably cost me $300. I mean, is this really necessary?
And again,
so you're a lawyer too, and you get it.
I am a lawyer.
And I thought these were online, actually, Mr. Chairman.
You have to have the hardbound books. See over there in the corner? Got to have the books.
So as I understand it, and you're probably going to have to buy a new one anyway, whether this bill passes or not. But as I understand it, if these formulas are in the Virginia Administrative Code, right?
Commissioner, I believe so. They're in the Administrative Code.
So to change anything in the Virginia Administrative Code, you would have to go through a regulatory rulemaking process that involves a certain amount of time of public comment, and it takes a long time. So if the goal here is you want to give them the flexibility to change the formulas without going through that regulatory process, you can only do that through legislation.
Mr. Chairman, Senator McCollum,
As much as I hate to admit that.
Unfortunately, that's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So then the question is it really necessary?
I have no position.
You have no position. All right, I think we got it.
I think that I really, in all fairness to you, Senator DeSteffe, I think what you have, if you were to work with Director Paylor, perhaps he would have a position next year, and it would be to do something similar to this. So I would move that we continue the bill.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I've actually worked with Director Paylor on this. They just didn't have the opportunity to take it up to the governor so they could actually take the official position.
I see.
But we have worked very closely with DEQ and others around DEQ and the crafting of this. I mean, good Lord, I wish I was smart enough and a lawyer to put this together, but I'm not. I'm just trying to make it more efficient.
Right.
And if the committee wants to carry this over to next year, that's perfectly fine with me.
I think what we're asking you is See if you can do this so that we don't have to buy new code books.
And
In a
again,
way, we don't
Mr.
have to buy new books.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think that'll ever happen.
Right. I'll be
So-
fine with the bill if, as long as we know we need to do it. Yeah, yeah.
All right. There is
Okay.
there is a motion properly seconded to carry the bill over for the year. Is that correct, Senator Hanger? Clerk, please open the roll.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator
We'll
Stepp.
see you
I'm
back.
sorry,
No, that's
sorry you had to
okay.
wait so long.
14
right.
ayes, 0 nays.
We'll see you next year, and we'll make sure that the commissioner can take the director can take a position.
Thank you. All right, I think that takes care of the docket. Okay. Thank you all so much. We have finished our docket in agriculture, conservation, natural resources, dogs and cat committee. Anyway, we finished our docket. Thank the staff so much for getting us through that, and everybody on the committee. Thanks. Meeting is adjourned.